On this episode of The Big Number, we dive into the stats to break down the latest news coming out of the NBA's investigation into Steve Ballmer, the Los Angeles Clippers, and debunk the three biggest myths surrounding this saga. All this and more coming up right now. This week's big number is 357, Amin. That is the number of days that has transpired since the NBA's cap circumvention scandal regarding Kawhi Leonard, the LA Clippers, Steve Ballmer, the alleged cap circumvention scandal. The investigation opened September 3rd, thanks to you and Pablo Torre and Dave Sampson over at Pablo Torre Finds Out. I mean, does it feel every bit of that 357 days?
Well, first of all, I'm a little disappointed that we're not talking about the haunted hotel in Oklahoma City. I thought I did pretty good work on that one as well. But yeah, Tom, it does feel every bit that long because we still don't have an answer. And I don't think in my wildest dreams, when we did that first episode with the knowledge that there would be more coming out, that it would be a year or literal week shy of a year later, and we still remain kind of verdictless.
Yeah. It's September 3rd will be the 1 year anniversary. So I don't know if there's going to be confetti or champagne popped. I certainly think the NBA would like it not to hit that point because we heard from Adam Silver earlier this summer. Adam Silver said he wanted this to wrap up in the summertime in advance of the NBA season starting. And interestingly enough, I looked at this just a second ago. I mean, October 10th. Do you know who the Clippers are playing in preseason to open their preseason this year?
The Toronto Raptors, I'm guessing?
Yeah, the Toronto Raptors are playing the LA Clippers to open up the season.
To be fair, the teams make their own preseason schedules. The league does not. Teams schedule that on their own, and typically that happens a year plus in advance. So I don't think they knew they'd be trading Kawhi, or maybe they did know and they just hadn't done it yet. But at least on the surface level, this is just one happy coincidence.
Yeah, it is one crazy coincidence. We're sitting here on August 26th. The 1 year anniversary is September 3rd. And Kawhi Leonard, I don't know if people really know which team he's gonna be on, considering this Aspiration, now bankrupt company at the center of a federal investigation, a whistleblower in one of the complaints, which was surfaced and reported by Pablo Torre Finds Out, that there was cash payments from Steve Ballmer and into Aspiration that was among other things, a way for Steve Ballmer and the organization, the Clippers, to funnel money, allegedly by this claim by the whistleblower complaint, to funnel money to Kawhi Leonard. And this wasn't a story a year ago until you guys surfaced it. Do you remember when you were called into the studio with Pablo Torre? Did you have any idea what you were about to uncover and that this would be a 14-part series?
I had no idea. Even after we did the first episode, I knew there would be more. I didn't know there'd be 14 parts more. But they called me in, and I remember them asking some really vague questions. One was about Uncle Dennis. One was about something completely different that I could not have connected. And I kind of let them know, yeah, I know a little bit about Uncle Dennis from being a behind-the-scenes NBA guy and all that. And that was it. I had no idea what direction we were going through. I'd never heard of Aspiration, to be honest with you, until we sat down and watched that ad that was voiced by Robert Downey Jr. and starring Robert Downey Jr. And we went through the celebrities who were all involved in marketing and promoting Aspiration. And at that point, I didn't even know we were doing a Clippers story. We were just doing something about this tree company that I'd never heard of that has all these celebrities, Drake and Leonardo DiCaprio and Orlando Bloom. And then the ties come in and it's like, oh. And then we're off to the races after that.
Yeah, because just to get everybody up to speed, there's been 14 episodes. The latest with David Sampson kind of summarizing the latest on that story. There's a Rhode Island soccer team that had a secret deal with Kawhi Leonard that you guys published. There's also a Daktronics deal. There's what ESPN reported was a Boingo wireless sponsorship deal that the NBA was reportedly reviewing. And all of this over the past year has kind of been surfaced. You guys had that episode with Mark Cuban, or he had that sit-down interview with Pablo. It all feels like it was 10 years ago. I mean, so just to like summarize what the allegations are is just that Kawhi Leonard had a no-show endorsement contract with Aspiration. No one seemed to know about it. The company went bankrupt. And as part of that bankruptcy filing, these two LLCs attached to Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis were looking for payments of $7 million that they Aspiration owed to Kawhi Leonard. And at that point, everyone goes, wait, what is this?
Yeah.
What does Kawhi Leonard have to do with this? And so that is at the heart of this story is, did Steve Ballmer and the Clippers, by trying to lure Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers and sign an extension with the Clippers, did they give him under the table cash benefits that are not allowable by the NBA's collective bargaining agreement? And it was not just a couple $100,000. This was upwards of $28 million in this no-show endorsement contract. It is kind of an oxymoron, right? Like at the face of this story, I mean, I still can't get over that this was never publicized. An endorsement contract that was magnitudes higher than Orlando Bloom and Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert Downey Jr. that did do an ad for Aspiration.
Right. So I didn't just name drop those people, for the fun of it. All those guys that I named that I think we can all universally agree, way more famous than this dude, right? Like that's not, There's no one out here to say Drake or Kawhi Leonard. Who do you think more people have heard of? We all agree Drake's more famous. We all agree Iron Man is more famous. We all agree The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio is more famous, right? We all agree. Maybe we might disagree whether Pirates of the Caribbean or Orlando Bloom
I think
is more famous, and Lord of the Rings, right? But significantly more famous, and they all did something. I can point to the interview that Drake did with Rolling Stone. I can point to the ad with Robert Downey Jr. in it. It's not just that Kawhi didn't do anything. It's that because of his claiming himself as a creditor in the bankruptcy of Aspiration, we got to see his contract, his actual paperwork. And the paperwork itself says, we're going to might ask you to tweet something or like a tweet or whatever, unless that goes against your beliefs. Now, that's not uncommon. In lots of contracts, endorsement contracts, spokesperson contracts, there'll be a belief section that like, I'm not going to do this part. Example, I'm Muslim. I don't eat pork. If McDonald's came to me today and said, we want you to do a McDonald's deal. Why don't you do McDonald's ads? I'd be like, sure, let's do it. Get me with a Big Mac, get me with the fries, get me with a McFlurry, even though the machine is broken, but I'll have one in the ad. But the moment they ask me to do a McRib, I say, I can't do that because that goes against my beliefs. And it would be in my contract. The person, me, cannot have any pork products in showing in the consuming or showing in the ad. So that's not uncommon. The uncommon part is say, unless it goes against your beliefs. What are your beliefs? We'll make it up as we go along. It doesn't define it anywhere. So Aspiration could have a tweet about, hey, submit a buck, have a tree planted in your name. Kawhi, can you go ahead and like retweet that? And they'd be like, I don't feel like it goes against my beliefs. They don't even get to ask him what the belief is. So that's the stuff that makes it kind of not make sense. The combination of he literally does not have to do a single thing to get this money, and this money is worth more than all of these far more famous, far more work done on behalf of the company have in people.
Yeah, and this is just one of the many deals that it is not just this deal. It's the Daktronics deal. It's the Rhode Island soccer.
Well, I want to be clear. The Rhode Island FC, I would for our purposes, say that this is still very much an open investigation. There is a lot of murkiness. There's a lot of questions, but I cannot draw an alleged thread between the Clippers or / Steve Ballmer, RIFC, and Kawhi Leonard at this stage. It's an ongoing investigation. Whereas with Aspiration, we have people on the record, obviously anonymous, but on the record saying, look, we did this. The original whistleblowing complaint that you mentioned, that's a whistleblowing complaint, not to the NBA, ladies and gentlemen, to the federal government. And this happened years before our investigation even was a glimmer in Pablo's eyes. Because it was a whistleblowing complaint to the federal government that fraud is happening at this company, Aspiration. And then like Section G was like other fraud. Yeah, we're helping the Clippers pay this guy, which would be weird. Why would you care if you were like dead set on kind of making something up? Why would that be the avenue for that to happen? But so we have all that connection with Aspiration. With Daktronics, we also have some emails. We have some connections. We have like circumstantial evidence that places a very clear connection between the Clippers, Daktronics, the company that did their video board, and Kawhi Leonard. With Rhode Island FC, I'm not saying there's nothing there. I'm saying at this point, there is no connective tissue between RIFC and the Clippers unless you say RIFC Daktronics, who did their board for a huge discount, and then that somehow is connected to the Clippers. But to me, that feels like the most convoluted connection out of the three instances that we've been talking about.
Still a really cool story that you can check out on Pablo Torre Finds Out YouTube channel. And the wild thing is, there was a trade that happened June 30th. We're coming up on the 2-month anniversary of the Clippers and the Raptors agreeing to a trade to send Kawhi Leonard to the Toronto Raptors, Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, 2 first-round picks, including the 2031 first-round pick, the 2033 first-round pick, a 2027 first-round swap, which is coming up this summer. All of this, we still have not settled because a couple weeks ago, we found out that the Toronto Raptors and the Clippers are putting the deal on hold until we find out the punishment. The NBA has not issued the punishment. Last week, ESPN reported that the NBA did not find evidence that the Clippers and Steve Ballmer circumvented the cap. However, the NBA came out with a very strongly worded statement within minutes of that report from ESPN saying that that was inaccurate. A lot of the details in there was inaccurate, and we still haven't gotten that investigation. Amin, this is extraordinarily long, that we're approaching the 12-month mark. The Robert Sarver investigation, that took 10 months roughly. The Mark Cuban investigation regarding workplace environment, that took roughly 7 months. Bruce Levinson, the owner of the previous owner of the Atlanta Hawks, that took 2 months. Even if you want to go back to the Glenn Taylor Minnesota Timberwolves cap circumvention, the stiffest penalty ever handed out at the time by the NBA regarding the cap circumvention deal with Joe Smith, that took roughly, 2 months to figure out, 7 to 8 weeks from start to finish. But a lot of those, they had actual writing, like the Joe Smith deal. Can you summarize for the audience why that one might have taken open and shut 2 months, whereas this one is taking almost 12 months plus to complete?
Right. And in many ways, the one has informed the other, right? The Joe Smith deal was Joe Smith signed a below market deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves because he was going to have his full bird rights by the end of it. And basically, the Timberwolves had promised in writing, when you do, we're going to give you this massive deal. Obviously, you cannot promise a future contract to someone. That's cap circumvention. So the big question is, all right, you can promise it. Why in the world would you ever put it in writing? And the reason why they put it in writing was because Joe Smith's reps at the time allegedly were worried that the owner of the Timberwolves would not survive. He would pass away before being able to make good on that promise. That owner was Glenn Taylor, who I'm proud to say is still alive and well with us today, 26 years later. But Joe Smith, that's the gold standard because it was like good old-fashioned cap circumvention. Here's a written contract. I promise to pay you this much as soon as this contract's over. Because of that, the current collective bargaining agreement is worded in a very, very brilliant way because the lawyers, the framers, if you will, generations ago, had the foresight to understand it's only going to get more complex because teams will learn from these mistakes. That's why, Tom, we have language like this. Quote, it shall constitute a violation of Section 1 above, which is basically paying someone, to enter into agreement when understanding with any sponsor or business partner or third party, under which said sponsor, business partner, third party pays or agrees to pay compensation for basketball services, even if such compensation is designated as for non-basketball services. So basically, I can't pay you to play basketball with the Clippers, even though I said, no, I'd pay you to be a spokesperson for my company. And then furthermore, it says, such an agreement with a sponsor, business, or third party may be inferred where the compensation is substantially in excess of fair market value of any services rendered. Substantially in excess of fair market value. Oh, you mean like paying him more than Drake and Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert Downey Jr. and Orlando Bloom combined? That kind of substantially in excess of fair market value? And then finally, and this is the kicker, and this one to me, this is the one that the league is really going to have to fight tooth and nail to convince us if there is kind of like, oh, we didn't find anything here. This is part 2 of Article 13. A violation of all the stuff I just said may be proven by direct or circumstantial evidence, including but not limited to evidence that a player contract or any term or provision thereof cannot rationally be explained in the absence of conduct violative of language above. So basically, we don't need a written contract. Oh, see, you have to have this in order to... No. We can use circumstantial evidence, like the type that we've displayed thus far. And then, more importantly, that it cannot rationally be explained. Can you rationally explain, Tom, why a company would pay Kawhi Leonard more than those aforementioned celebrities combined? Can you explain rationally why a company that has never had a spokesperson in its 60-year history, I'm talking about Daktronics here, would all of a sudden say, I need a spokesperson and I need it to be the quietest man in the NBA? Are there rational explanations for that? Because if not, I believe what you have on your hands is circumstantial evidence that cap circumvention occurred.
And the job of the Clippers in this case and the lawyers to figure out is whether that language pertains to his actual player contract, capital P, capital C, or does it apply also to these endorsement contracts, sponsorship contracts? And then it gets into, well, if it only applies to endorsement contracts, and we'll get into this with the LeBron Bloomberg report later, that seems like a lot of billable hours for the NBA league office to figure out if all of these contracts go ahead.
I was gonna say, but this would be a much stronger argument on the Clippers' behalf if I had seen Kawhi in an Aspiration ad with Robert Downey Jr. The same way that, some people say, what about Steph? He does Chase commercials. Chase is paying him. Like, yeah, he does. Exactly. He does Chase commercials with Kevin Hart, and he goofs off, and he does all that stuff. It's like, regardless of what they're paying him, they can rationally say, number one, Steph Curry is one of the most famous athletes in the world in a way that Kawhi is not. Number two, he's actively doing it. And in case you didn't know who he was, like, I don't know who this light-skinned basketball player is. Well, he's with Kevin Hart, who's one of the most famous actors in the world. And they're there at the same time in the same ad. That's all you need to do, really, to cover your tracks, is just make it look plausible. The problem, the big glaring red flag in the Clippers case is the fact that it ties to one, Kawhi didn't do anything. And then when you tie in the reports, the numerous reports of multiple teams saying that they were approached by representatives of Kawhi looking for, as part of his compensation, a no-show job with a sponsor. The Lakers and the Raptors both reported this. That's the part. It's like, oh, the thing that you were rumored to be looking for, now coincidentally it happened here. These are the things that make it, like I said, circumstantial, but cannot rationally be explained.
And so that's what we'll find out in the coming days, if the Adam Silver timeline is to be believed
or not,
or not. Who knows if Pablo and you have more up your sleeve or things that you're reporting out. We don't know that yet, but we do have stuff that I wrote down here. Some myths about the NBA's investigation, the Clippers cap circumvention case with Kawhi Leonard that I've seen that I think we want to get into is just trying to pressure test some of these theories or misconceptions right off the bat. The first one that I hear a lot, myth number one, Amin and Pablo are out to get Kawhi Leonard. Defend yourself. It seems like you are anti-player. You hate the empowerment era that Kawhi Leonard's getting this money. How dare you tear down Kawhi Leonard here? And you seem like you got some arrows out for this guy. Can you defend yourself against this allegation that you're just out to go get Kawhi Leonard here?
Yeah, the funny thing is this is an allegation that I've actually encountered in the wild from players and player-adjacent people, I would say. And what I always say to them is, number one, Tom, you ever seen the movie American Gangster? With,
yes.
Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. Denzel Washington plays the famous drug lord Frank Lucas. Russell Crowe is this cop who's like figures out that this guy's ahead of the heroin business in New York and sets out to take him down. It's based on a true story. I said, to think that this story is about Kawhi Leonard is like watching American Gangster and walking away and say, I don't know why Russell Crowe has such a hard-on for T.I. Why did they just leave T.I. alone? T.I. is just trying to make it like, well, T.I. was part of this thing, but he's not the guy at the top of the fictional bulletin board that we're looking at with strings. Mr. Big in this is Steve Ballmer. This is a story of cap circumvention. It's about a team deciding it didn't have to play by the rules. I am team always, hey, player, get money, get paid, whatever. But what we're doing is uncovering that this team allegedly worked outside of the rules to get a player.
And it wouldn't be the first time, by the way. We haven't touched on that.
It wouldn't be the first time for this organization, this owner, to be doing such. And my whole thing is this. This is why you should care if you're not a Clipper fan. If you're like, oh, I'm a fan of the Raptors. Well, I guess not the Raptors. Bad example. I'm a fan of the Pacers. I'm a fan of the Hawks. Why should I care? Because the collective bargaining agreement, even if you say, by the way, I'm a fan of players. I don't even care about teams. I care about players. All right, you care about players. Cool. The CBA details why we have a salary cap. They negotiated. The Players Association lost a long time ago. The owners won to have a salary cap. Why do they have a salary cap? Because they're saying, well, without a salary cap, we're just going to be paying all these guys too much money. And so we need rules to curtail our spending. So if you have a guy working outside the rules to pay someone outside the rules, not only is it unfair to the other owners who are playing by the rules, who are not doing this, but also it's unfair to all the other players. What? I could be making so much more money on the side if it wasn't for this thing that apparently doesn't matter. If he can just cheat and break the rules, it doesn't matter. Wait, where's my side payment? Where's my side hustle? Where's my endorsement deal where I don't have to do anything? Every player in the league could say that. And so if your mission is to say, let's get rid of the salary cap, let's pay the players what they're actually worth, then you should be rooting for this investigation to end up holding the Clippers accountable.
Yeah, and I would also say, one of the great alternate universes in this story is if the Clippers win a championship. with Kawhi Leonard. And it has a lot more legs in this story for Steve Ballmer to allegedly circumvent the cap, to bring in and make Kawhi Leonard happy with a laundry list of items he needs to have in order to sign and extend with your organization. He does all that. The Clippers do all that under the table in this alternate universe, and they go and they win a championship. Yeah. And people, I don't think in that sense would be angry I don't think people would be alleging or like accusing you guys of trying to take down Kawhi. Well, people would say that's so unfair that the Clippers they just did all of this illegal stuff under the CBA and now they won a championship with it. But because the Clippers, in a weird way, because the Clippers never won anything, quote unquote, in this Kawhi Leonard era that may or may not be closing, it feels like Steve Ballmer, there's this void that Steve Ballmer, if he had won a championship, people would be just like the Houston Astros with their cheating scandal, with the banging of the garbage bins. People were so much louder about that cheating scandal because it resulted in a World Series win. Right.
Does anyone remember? Does anyone remember Ben Johnson's name if he doesn't beat Carl Lewis in the 8,800 meter dash? They don't, because he beat Carl Lewis. He was on the juice. He got stripped. Carl Lewis ends up getting the gold. But if Ben Johnson had came in second, I guarantee you no one would remember his name. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but that's a very important thing, especially when you're talking about a document like the collective bargaining agreement. We cannot be a results-oriented investigation. It's about the process, meaning them winning the championship can't be the reason why we care. Might be the reason why some people care, some fans care. But if you're in the business of running this league, either from the league office or as a member, as a team member, you have to care, because just because they were unsuccessful, it would be like if someone tried to rob the bank because there's no night watchman on the back door and they got caught because they got caught speeding somewhere else or whatever. And say, well, they didn't even get away with it, so why do we care? Because the next guy's going to rob the bank. That's why we care. You got to make sure that the bank is not vulnerable. And the Clippers very clearly attack the vulnerability, even though said vulnerability is discussed in great detail in Article 13 of the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, there's another misconception that is a newer story, which is the LA Clippers are not the only team in LA. There's another one, the Lakers, that just sold for $12.5 billion to a group led by Josh Kushner and Bob Iger. Reportedly $12.5 billion. Mark Walter, who is under investigation. There have been no charges with the federal government regarding his Guggenheim empire, his investments. And now Bloomberg is reporting on Tuesday, that LeBron James had a deal with two insurers that lent him $300 million, allegedly, according to this report, that one of the Guggenheim linked firms gave LeBron James a $300 million loan. And this, while we're talking about Kawhi Leonard, wait, hold on. Guggenheim, the same company that Mark Walter is running, gave LeBron James a one of his associated companies gave LeBron James a $300 million loan back in 2018, I should say, from Midwestern Life Insurance, advised by an arm of Guggenheim. Investigate that guy, LeBron, for cap circumvention here. We have another cap circumvention case. I think that is a myth, and let's talk about it. Why? I mean, this Kawhi Leonard situation with the cap circumvention regarding Aspiration and other entities that the NBA is looking at, it is not apples to apples to this LeBron situation, correct?
Yes. Shout out to Apple Time, Kawhi Leonard, one of my favorite fake news stories of all time. It's not. On the one hand, in the Kawhi story, we have payments for services rendered, even though the service rendered was nothing. In the LeBron story, it is a loan based on collateral that he has, and he has collateral. He has his Nike deal, his lifetime Nike contract, among others, to use as collateral to loan money. In essence, what LeBron did was, if you ever watch a J.G. Wentworth commercial, if you have an annuity and you need cash now, called JG Wentworth 877 cash now, right? Except LeBron, obviously, you can't get $300 million from JG Wentworth. So what you do is you go to these private insurers. Now, most of us think of insurance, Tom, we're on the wrong end of the stick here, right? Where we're paying premiums every month, health insurance, dental, vision, life insurance, cars, housing, whatever, right? You're paying. And the chances that something goes wrong, I need a root canal, my house burnt down, whatever, and then they pay us back. But if nothing goes wrong, the insurance companies collect all these premiums. What do they do with that money?
They sit on it, right?
They loan it out. They loan it out at an interest rate so that they're making money off of your money. So even when they pay you back, it's not just like they held the money and handed it right back. They made money on that. That money was working while you were busy paying your premiums. So this is an example of a guy's, his LLC, his company, going and borrowing and using his contracts as collateral. Now, could this be cap circumvention? There's an opening. There's a gray area there in the sense of what was his interest rate? What was the going rate on a loan of that nature? And also, was he introduced to this lender as part of his recruitment to the Lakers, or had this had nothing to do with it? Was because there's only a handful of these companies, as I understand it, who do this type of, private loans of that nature.
Right.
Again, compare and contrast with you're getting paid. Kawhi Leonard didn't have to pay anything back. Matter of fact, when he didn't get paid all his money, he went after them in bankruptcy court.
Yeah, and we have that in the court filings in the bankruptcy court. This is different in a number of ways. One of which is that this initial loan of $300 million that was reported by Bloomberg came in 2018. LeBron James wasn't even on the Lakers in 2018. Yeah. He was on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Not until that summer, not until July 1 or whenever he signed, July, whatever.
So the idea is if you're trying to connect dots that are not there, you're trying to say this $300 million loan was given to LeBron James as some sort of sweetheart deal to potentially get him over to the Lakers. But Mark Walter, who was running Guggenheim, he wasn't even part of the Lakers at this point.
Right.
So it's a matter of degrees of leaps you have to make in order for this to be anything nefarious or untoward. And so this report from Bloomberg, while it is an interesting story that LeBron James was able to get $300 million in cash alone, is a stunning number for the citizens like you and I, that LeBron James got a $300 million loan. But the timeline doesn't match up that this would be any sort of under the table agreement as far as we can tell, because Mark Walter did not become a minority owner of the Los Angeles Lakers until 2021. Yes. And then, as Bloomberg reports, the NBA reportedly reviewed this agreement that happened, another round of a loan to LeBron James. They injected more money into this fund and he got more money. And that deal in 2022 was approved by the NBA. And initially I'm like, I don't understand why this is an NBA story, but because Mark Walter, who's running Guggenheim, who's the head of the Guggenheim empire, is now owning a big piece of the Lakers, not the controlling piece of the Lakers. He's not running the Lakers. That happened last year. But in 2022, according to Bloomberg, the NBA reviewed this loan to LeBron James, this round of it, and said, yep, that's fine. That's not anything untoward here. We're fine. But you mentioned it. The issue for the league is, was this a sweetheart deal as some sort of like, I scratch yours, I give you this $300 million loan that one day you'll join the Lakers? The only thing that I think the league would have to look into is something that I think financial analysts do all the time in this private lending business is, hey, what is the going rate? The interest rate. Right. And Bloomberg reported that the initial one in 2018 was 4.8% interest rate. And if that came in substantially lower than other possible offers to LeBron James, like let's just say I'm taking out a loan for my house, and I go to all these banks and I say, hey, I would like to take out a mortgage, and the interest rate that they offer me, I get 6% from this bank and 6.5 from this bank, and then 7% from this bank, and then this other guy comes in, he says, I'll give you 4%.
Yeah.
But if only if you kind of do this thing for me later on. That's when it gets fishy. We have no evidence at this point. I mean, as far as we could tell, that 4.8% signed in 2018 was below market, was part of a larger arrangement. But LeBron having a $300 million loan that was arranged in part with Guggenheim, it only now becomes a story because it wasn't reported before. We didn't know about this when it was signed. But man, the timelines don't really match up in the same way that Kawhi Leonard, that you can trace a lot of these payments through bankruptcy filings. We just don't have a lot of that information at this point.
The only connective tissue would be that at the time of 2018, the president of basketball operations was Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was a business partner of Mark Walter in the ownership of the Dodgers. So, like, that's a thread if you wanted to be amateur sleuth and say, well, how did Magic present his pitch to LeBron, and was this part of it? But again, this also highlights the difference between the Kawhi case and in this case in terms of investigation, in that in our findings we had documents, we had people speaking on the record. It wasn't just, wait a second, that guy worked there with that guy. That's not how this works, right? And so that everyone knows, there's an incredible amount of work that goes in between learning about something and coming to light with a story. I'm not talking about Bloomberg. I'm talking about anyone out there who's trying to surmise. Well, there you go. You read a Bloomberg article and you're like, well, Magic worked there, and there you go. That's very different from Pablo Torre finds out staff working from February of 2025 to September of 2025 for that first episode. That's the amount of work that took for us to come out with that very first episode on Kawhi and the Clippers.
7 months of work before that first one, and then we're still waiting to hear the NBA's punishment, if there is any punishment. I will add that in the Joe Smith case from 2000, the NBA voided the contract of Joe Smith. So the bird rights that the Minnesota Timberwolves were going to use to go above the cap and sign him to this huge contract, that was voided. He became a free agent. Secondly, the NBA levied a $3.5 million fine, which was the largest the NBA had fined any organization at the time. And thirdly, the NBA docked them 5 first-round picks. And what's interesting that I don't think people realize, but that ended up being only 3 first-round picks because the NBA, as part of good standing or goodwill, or the agreement that when Glenn Taylor later was suspended from team activities for and through August 31 of that year, as part of that with Kevin McHale, who was the head of basketball ops at the time, he was also on leave. As part of that, they were given back one of those first round picks, and then later on was given another. So they ended up, the NBA returned 2 of those first round picks that they were penalized, which brings us to our third misconception here.
Before we move on from that, the other common thread between that and the Clippers, Tom, Joe Smith was going to be very handsomely paid had this deal gone through. It didn't go through. Was Joe Smith one of the best power forwards in the game?
No, actually his teammate, Kevin Garnett was, yes. Yeah.
Joe Smith, former number 1 overall pick, but he was a rather average NBA player. He had a long career, but he was an average NBA player. Like I would compare him to like an Isaiah Stewart or someone like that kind of player. So they went through all that hassle, and what did they have to show for it? Nothing. They ended up signing him, by the way, after all of this. They ended up signing him for much less money. It actually saved them considerably the embarrassment of having to pay him that large salary at that time, because he was nowhere near that good. There's a similarity there. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard is a great player. We're not saying that, but the idea that, the Clippers didn't win anything, what does it matter? Well, neither did the T-Wolves.
Yeah, they haven't yet. still, even with Kevin Garnett, Joe Smith, and the rest. And they just sold for a $4.5 billion valuation. This notion of the punishment that the league could potentially levy against the Clippers brings us to our third misconception here. Our third myth is the Raptors. In this limbo that they're in, the Raptors are praying for a slap on the wrist. And the idea is, hey, let's look at this. Let's just let this go through. Let's water under the bridge. Let's just push this trade through. And we agreed to terms already on June 30th. Let's just get this over with and move on. Amin, when you're looking at this, why is that a misconception here? Why is that a myth?
Because if it goes through with just a slap on the wrist or whatever, they got Kawhi. They got the deal that they agreed to. They sent Grady Dick and they sent Brandon Ingram and those bevy of picks that you mentioned earlier. And that's cool. Obviously, they agreed to that. That's what they wanted. But if it doesn't go through, if the league goes scorched earth, and scorched earth is, again, forfeiture of picks, suspension of personnel, fine, and voiding of Kawhi Leonard's contract. Well then, Kawhi Leonard just became a free agent. And pretty much all the money is spent out there on the market. So he gets his choice to where he wants to go. And we already know from the trade that he favored going to Toronto because he felt comfortable there. He felt there's a lot of familiar personnel there. He likes Toronto if he's going to leave. So if Kawhi Leonard's contract gets voided, he becomes a free agent, and pretty much you just lay it out that there's not a lot of money out there, so he's got to sign minimum. Where do you think he's going to go? He's going to go to Toronto, which means Toronto gets Kawhi Leonard without giving up Brandon Ingram, without giving up Grady Dick, and most importantly, without giving up a bevy of picks. They get to have their cake and eat it too.
Which would be a wild development here, right? Like,
oh my God. Like, if you're a Raptor fan and you're upset, like, trust me, this might be the best case scenario for you.
Yeah, and look, does that punish Kawhi if he's having to sign a veteran minimum contract? Then it opens up all sorts of other Pandora's box about, like, how does Toronto make Kawhi Leonard whole now if he's signed to basically what amounts to a small deal? But then,
you got to, like you said,
Joe Smith wasn't Kawhi Leonard. But if the Minnesota Timberwolves could sign Joe Smith on a vet minimum deal, and Joe Smith lost all that money, but also the Minnesota Timberwolves, like, we don't actually have to pay him that much. That actually works out great for us. The Toronto Raptors right now, because we should mention the Clippers are denying all of this, and also the contracts that Kawhi Leonard signed, it's kind of in the rear view mirror. It's not like this current contract that Kawhi Leonard is under could be voided in the same way that Joe Smith was.
I mean, it could be. There's a legal argument, right? Because it's not. This isn't the contract. At least I don't think so. Maybe we got to check. But I know for the Aspiration one, it happened on the prior deal, which was a deal he signed. It was the extension where he took less than.
Right. But the idea is like,
this is a new contract basically.
Yeah, and Kawhi, he's seeking an extension. The Clippers may not be willing to do that. It gets all very messy depending on where the NBA, lands with this contract. That the punishment and whether to void Kawhi Leonard, or they might just say, hey, this was all on Steve Ballmer and the organization, or his Uncle Dennis, his agent. This has nothing to do with Kawhi. But in the case with Joe Smith, it didn't matter. Joe Smith had his contract voided as part of the punishment. So look, Kawhi Leonard at this point, he is getting paid $50 million this upcoming season. If that gets voided as part of a punishment, man, a lot can happen. But this is different. When you guys first reported this story, I was saying, imagine if the NBA this season, in the middle of the season, finds enough to punish Kawhi Leonard and say, we're voiding your contract, we're ripping it up under the terms of this deal. Tons of teams would be like, oh, we're moving this contract. Yeah. We're going to clear the house because we're in the middle of the season. We can figure out deals to open up cap space, and there would be a lot more liquidity in the open market to get a deal done. Now it's a lot tougher. It's a lot tougher at the end of the transaction cycle. So,
well, yeah, no, for this season, it's almost impossible. If you would have to be a team that would still make those moves, but then somehow try to convince Kawhi to sign with you as a minimum player this year with the knowledge, albeit not written or spoken or communicated in any sort of long-lasting way, the knowledge that, hey, we're going to do everything we can to clear cap space. But again, even that's not cap circumvention, because it's not wrong with making moves to clear out cap space to sign a player that you need cap space to sign. That's not a violation. Violation is when you say, in the meantime, here's some extra cash to get you on by. That's the violation.
Well, I mean, to wrap up here, you are the first Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist we've had on this program here. Dan and I don't have a Pulitzer. Why do you think you guys got a Pulitzer for your reporting? Like, what do you think is what this story, why did it have so much traction in the journalism community, in the YouTube community? Like, what do you think it is about? Because it seems like Kawhi Leonard is not the most interesting superstar. In fact, it's part of the heart of this case is that he isn't a guy who's a very public-facing figure and is a person who generates so much interest like a LeBron or a Steph Curry or an Anthony Edwards. And then Steve Ballmer, he's the richest owner in sports, but he's also what seems like a great steward of what we would want the league of an owner courtside, super involved on and rallying up the fan base and just being what seems like, besides the cap circumvention stuff, which DeAndre Jordan and the free agency deal, the pitch years ago that the NBA punished Steve Ballmer and the Clippers on. And this one seems like, man, the Clippers don't seem like this is an organization that would draw a lot of interest, fan bases. But I think the larger story here that caught the eyes of the Pulitzer Prize awarding committee is what? Like, why do you think this struck such a chord?
I can only read into what they actually said. This is from the Pulitzer.org website. We won, staff of Pablo Torre finds out, for a pioneering and entertaining form of live podcast journalism that investigated how the Clippers seemingly evaded the NBA salary cap rules by funneling money to a star player through an environmental startup. The other nominees that we were up against, one was the Wall Street Journal, the other was the New York Times. I believe the Wall Street Journal's story was about stand your ground laws and about a fatal shooting that was not prosecuted. The New York Times story was about transgender youth and the ethics of administering transitioning medications to them. Those are two massive hot button issues that impact, that I would say everybody in this country has an opinion on one way or another. They can relate to it in that way, like they've got an opinion. And ours was like basically a bookkeeping story about the less popular Los Angeles team and the most quiet, unassuming superstar in the league. And so what is it about that leapt out to them? And I go back to pioneering and entertaining form. The pioneering part is that Pablo does not let David Sampson nor I know what we're talking about. We are discovering it along the way. In essence, David and I are playing the role of you, the listener or the viewer. I'm like, what does that mean? Da, da, da. Except we also bring to the table institutional knowledge that helps us explain, wait, that doesn't sound right. And wait, that's not how you do that. So it's like having an informed member of the audience sitting in on this. And then the other part of it, beyond pioneering, is entertaining. And that's the part I take credit for, because I dress up and I do funny things and I tell jokes and I make references. And I look, if they hadn't said entertaining, I wouldn't be taking that much credit. I'd be like, man, I mean, I was there, but like, hey, the entertainment part, that's your boy.
What episode was it when you were sweating through everything?
I maybe 3 or 4. Well, the third or fourth one I was on. I don't know where it was in the series, but I wore a suit and then I slowly kind of disrobed and loosened the tie and all that stuff. I also had an episode where I wore a Clippers jersey to show everyone that I was not biased or whatever. I'm rooting for the Clippers here. We also had the episode that we did live at the Sloan Conference in Boston, which they taped the federal whistleblower document underneath the chair that Adam Silver had sat in earlier that day at the conference. We do a lot of hijinks around here.
Yeah, the Iron Man planting a tree. Let's not forget about that one in the
oh my god
first episode. I mean, remember that when we were kids? It was just it's so long ago.
Remember when we found out that they actually planted a tree? This is like 2 episodes ago. This is it's like this whole time we had that video. We'd seen the video of the dedication. Never once saw the tree. Right there on the girder on the way up.
It reminds me of the episode we did on the gambling scandal where we're watching the Dante DiVincenzo 3 at the Garden, and we couldn't believe. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at there. Spoiler.
Watch that episode. Basketball Illuminati. Keep your third eye open.
Yeah, go watch that episode. And go listen to Amin Elhassan over at Meadowlark Media, Lebitard Show, also SiriusXM NBA Radio, and Basketball Illuminati. We just had a week with TrueHoop.com's an episode this week with Henry Abbott talking about all the various ownership scandals with the league and kind of a roundup on that. And yeah, I'm curious to see if you guys have another episode on this. I know that the verdict will have to come in at some point, and hopefully it's not another 357 days from now. So, Amin, thank you for sitting in for Dan Devine, who's on vacation this week. I want to remind everybody, go subscribe to the YouTube channel for The Big Number and the home for Kevin O'Connor Show and the Dunker Spot at Yahoo NBA. And thank you to Emmy and Rye behind the scenes. Appreciate you producing the show. And Amin, yes?
Final word. How does this work? Does Dan have to fill in for me when I take a week off of Basketball Illuminati, or how does that work?
Yeah, we'll talk. Well, Emmy, Ryan, and I will talk to Dan about that.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, he at this point, he's probably nice and tan from his vacation. I don't know if he'll be able to sit in, but yeah, we'll talk to him about that. I mean, we all want a Pulitzer, so we'd love to sit in for you if we can.
Well, it's big shoes, but they're easy to fill.
All right, that'll do it for The Big Number this week. Thank you to Amin Elhassan, and we'll talk next week right here on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks, everybody.